Hey everyone, it's Lance with Christianity Minute. Prayer is something that a large number of folks really lack today. In today's world, to be seen talking to an invisible God, well, that's just shy of certifiable. The thing is that humanity has done it since the very beginning of time, not out of ignorance or immaturity as a species, but because God is always there, just out of sight, and He wants to hear from us. He built in us a desire to seek Him, to seek God, and to seek the deeper meanings of life. Today, I really wanted to discuss when to pray and how important it is. But before I do, I want to take a second and thank you for checking out this video. Be sure to leave a like, and for more videos like this, consider subscribing to my channel and hitting that bell icon for notifications. If you have any questions or would like to request a video topic, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Also, if you'd like to help produce these videos, please donate through the links in the video description. I want our primary example to be of Jesus. When He was human, boy, did He know how to pray. And He did so with real passion and sincerity. It's actually recorded in multiple places where He teaches us how to pray, giving us instructions, and we'll talk about that next week. Very often, though, Jesus prayed, and we can see evidence of that it was multiple times every day. We should all strive to have a daily focus on God, and with that comes communication with God. Let's look at Matthew chapter 15, verse 36. It reads, "And He took 7 loaves and with the fish, and having given thanks, He broke them and gave them to His disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds." Now, while the focus of this passage's context is the miracle with the loaves and the fishes and the feeding of 4,000 people, we see something very important that Jesus does before the miracle. He prays. He gives thanks to God for the food that He was able to perform the miracle with in the following verses. Are we truly thankful for our blessings, our daily blessings? Let's go to Mark chapter 1, verse 35. "And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, He departed and went to a desolate place, and there He prayed." Here we see Jesus getting up early in the morning and going to pray. We can see Jesus would often get up to pray to God before the day begins, usually by himself, which kind of freaked out the apostles sometimes because he was kind of a marked man. But He would bracket his day communicating with God, starting his day off right and probably ending it in the same way. Imagine how much better our outlook on life would be if we put more focus on God to kick off our day. We see in Luke chapter 15 and verse 16 where it reads here, "But He would withdraw to desolate places to pray." It's important to note that Jesus would do a lot of His praying in secret, away from people. That's important to note. Jesus was very public in His criticism of the Jewish leadership for praying to be seen, as we can see in Matthew chapter 6, verses 5 and 6. It says, "And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners, and they love to be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. When you pray, go into your room, shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we should always lock ourselves in a room to pray. Jesus isn't saying that either. Instead, He's talking about the state of the heart when praying. The hypocrites, as He calls them, are praying for the purpose of being seen as righteous and close to God, when, let's face it, in reality, they couldn't be much further away. They did it to be seen, not to communicate, to have a relationship with God, which, we'll go a little further into that next week. Be sure to come back. Jesus spoke to God not only as a means of having a relationship, but also to petition God. Let's read John chapter 14, verses 16 through 17. "And I will ask the Father, and He will give you another helper, to be with you forever. Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him, for he dwells with you and will be in you. Here we see Jesus praying that God would send the Holy Spirit to guide them after his death. It's interesting that he does this because that's kind of God's plan. But to pray this just goes to show how much Jesus cares for his disciples and shows that he's in agreement with God, the Father. His caring doesn't end there, though. Let's look at Luke chapter 22, verses 31 through 32. Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you, that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. This is strange. Here we see Jesus is praying that his disciples be guided and protected from the wiles of the devil. We see here that the devil has petitioned God to have Peter so that he could, quote unquote, sift him like wheat. Jesus prayed that that would never happen. He prayed for the faith that wouldn't fail Peter, and in so many others. We look at John chapter 11, verses 41 through 42. It says, So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. Now, Jesus prayed for the people around him all to believe. He used the resurrection of Lazarus to do just that. But his prayer was for the faith of the people. I dare say that he was even praying for all of us who can read the account. Have you prayed for your faith never to waver, just as Jesus had done? Jesus also prays before important events in his life. Let's look at Luke chapter 3, verses 21 through 22. He says, Now when all the people were baptized, and when Jesus also had been baptized and was praying, the heavens were opened, and the Holy Spirit descended on him in a bodily form like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, You are my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Jesus was praying at his baptism, and God the Father indicated how pleased he was with Jesus. We also see in Luke chapter 6, verses 12 through 16, where it reads, In these days he went out to the mountain to pray, and all night he continued in prayer to God. And when that day came, he called his disciples and chose them from the 12, whom he called his apostles. And he lists them all here. They're all listed. You notice he prayed before selecting his disciples. He knew the importance of this selection, as they were going to be the ones to spread his message and complete that message with the help of the Holy Spirit. This would be a critical decision that Jesus could only prepare for properly in one way: prayer. Any major event in his life, well, we can see it predicated on prayer. The most important event in Jesus' life, though, was the crucifixion, hands down. And he was praying for that as well. Jesus was under incredible stress leading up to the event. He knew the suffering he was about to endure, and his body was responding with unimaginable stress. Let's read Luke chapter 22, verse 44. It says, And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Imagine your sweat becoming like blood. This is actually a real medical condition, and it's called, bear with me, I'm not a doctor, sorry Rebecca, I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure, hematoiditis? Look it up. And it happens in cases of extreme stress, where the capillary blood vessels to the sweat glands literally burst under the pressure of the stressful state of the body. Jesus was in agony just by the stress, but he was still praying. Even when everything had finally come to fruition and Jesus was on the cross, we can read in Luke chapter 23 and verse 34, it says, And Jesus said, Father, forgive them. they know not what they do. He was still praying. So, here's the question. How important is prayer? Well, how important is communication in a relationship of any kind between two people? Be that, be a husband, wife, be it two friends, father, son, mother, daughter, any kind of relationship. The answer is vital. Communication with God is not dissimilar in that way. God responds to prayer in ways that people who are spiritually minded, they see it and understand. There is two-way communication there. Those who are not spiritually minded, well, they don't see the purpose in it other than to talk to an invisible God. The power of the Spirit, though, in understanding what prayer does in our lives is something that has to be studied and understood. And, well, you've made it to the end of this video. So, do you want to understand? Do you understand? Do you even know how to pray? Well, yes, there is a way to pray. And let's talk about that next week. I'll see you next time. That's been your Christianity Minute for this week. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you like this video, hit that like button and consider subscribing and sharing with your friends. I work very hard to make sure that all things said are scripturally accurate. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in that comment section below, and I'll see you next time right here on Christianity Minute.